Do you know what time it is? It's supernatural story time. And if you're easily scared, and even if you're not, there's only one thing left to do. Just turn off the lights, because these are stories that you listen to only in the dark. Nightmare Stories, Volume 3, Story Number 1. An urban legend haunts my hometown. A hitchhiker appears on Ebon Lane if you follow the exact ritual. Summon him, drive him to his destination, and, if you play the game perfectly, he will answer one unknowable question. Break the rules, and the deep blue water at the end of the lane claims another car. An abandoned gravel pit lies at the lane's end. Its water gleams an impossible bottomless blue, like a tear in the world. Over the years, crews have pulled twisted wrecks from those depths. Officials claim the drivers simply fell asleep. Locals know better. Those cars belong to people who failed the hitchhiker. No one has traced the legend's origin. I searched newspaper archives and questioned the Historical Society. Nothing. It lives only in whispered conversations at dinners and late-night Facebook groups. Details shift with every telling. His clothes grow more modern, his age changes, yet every survivor swears he felt solid, wet, and real. One detail never varies. He always enters the car dripping, and he always speaks the same first words. It's a bad night for rain. You must reply, is there ever a good night? He laughs. The game begins. I followed the ritual on a moonless October night. At exactly midnight, I started my four-door sedan and refused to leave it. For 3 hours, I drove empty back roads, avoiding police who know the legend and will end your attempt with a single traffic stop. At 3 a.m. sharp, I reached the pickup spot on Ebon Lane. I left the engine running in drive with the emergency brake engaged. I killed every light, the radio, the air, and my phone. I unlocked the doors 3 times, rolled down all 4 windows, pressed the brake pedal 3 times, then switched the headlights back on. I waited. At 3:03 a.m., the fog thickened. A car door shut behind me. It's a bad night for rain, the voice said from the back seat. Chill fingers crawled up my spine. I glimpsed him in the rearview mirror, mid-20s, dark jeans, red windbreaker, faded band shirt soaked through. Water dripped steadily from his cuffs onto the floor mat. Is there ever a good night? I answered. He laughed, sharp and wet. I released the brake. Put your wipers on, champ, he said. You won't see the road in this downpour. I switched the wipers to full speed even though the night was bone dry. The blades screamed across the glass. I drove. He directed me with casual ease, yet every turn led us deeper into a silent, emptied world. Street lights vanished. Houses went dark. The glowing Taco Bell I had passed earlier now stood black and lifeless. No other cars moved on the roads. We had slipped somewhere else. He spoke easily, voice smooth and disarming. I told him I chase ghosts and legends in my free time. He leaned forward, shredded sleeves, brushing the seat. What's the scariest thing you've ever seen? He asked. I described a night inside the ruined Blackthorn Asylum. He reacted with genuine horror and fascination, as if he had never heard the tale, as if he were still alive. The dashboard clock read 3:29. At 3:33 he pointed ahead. This is me. I pulled onto the shoulder, killed the lights and radio, and locked my hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel. I stared down at my knuckles and did not look up. The door opened. Gravel crunched as he walked around to my window. Thanks for the ride, he said, voice now flat and empty. Do you have a question for me? I swallowed. Is she at peace? Does she blame me? Only then did I look. He had no face. 2 glossy black pools stared back. Perfect circles of liquid night reflecting every star in the sky. Vast, empty, eternal. That's 2 questions, he whispered. Terror seized me. I had broken the rule. He slowly raised his hands, then pulled the hood of his windbreaker over the void where his face should have been. Because you were kind enough to drive me on this rainy night, he said. I will still answer. He leaned forward. The smell of wet earth and cold water filled the car. She is not at peace, and she does blame you. He stepped back. Drive safe. I watched in the mirror as he walked into the darkness. When his footsteps faded, I looked up. I sat on Ebon Lane again, parked beside the gravel pit's drop-off. One twitch of my foot and the car would roll forward, gathering speed until the black water swallowed it. Headlights appeared down the road. Reality snapped back. Streetlights flickered on. I drove home just after 5 a.m. 3 days later, the damp footprints remain in my back seat. The scent of wet loam still clings to the upholstery. On my desk sits a photograph of my wife Lydia, smiling. Kay taken 2 weeks before she died. I keep hearing his words. Tonight, the sky hangs heavy with clouds. I have filled the tank. I am wearing a gray hoodie and jeans. I'm going back to Ebon Lane. If you ever pick up a dripping hitchhiker who tells you it is a bad night for rain, look closely at his clothes. You may already know how this story ends. Next story. Driving through the backwoods of Black Hollow, Kentucky at night remains the most terrifying experience of my life. Anyone who knows these hills understands. The thick forest and steep ridges swallow every trace of moonlight, leaving only absolute darkness. Ancient anger lingers here. The land itself feels alive with hatred as though it wants you gone, or dead. These roads see almost no traffic after sunset. Cell service flickers and dies. If your car fails, you stand alone among isolated homes whose residents do not welcome strangers wandering their property in the dead of night. My mother called it bad country. One word. She warned me for years to avoid it, saying travelers disappear or meet far worse fates. I've heard every story. Ambushed motorists, strange lights, vanishing hitchhikers, and families that should not exist. Hundreds of people have simply gone missing, never found. I always avoided those hills until one night in October, when I had no choice. My mother called just after midnight. My father had collapsed and lay in serious condition at the hospital in Hazard. I lived in Ridgeview at the time, a little under 2 hours away by the interstate. That night the main highway remained closed for bridge work, forcing me into Kentucky 52, south through the heart of bad country. Dread coiled in my stomach from the moment I started the engine. Every instinct screamed to wait until dawn. But I could not. I needed to reach my father. The drive from Ridgeview to Stone Creek passed without incident. I pushed the speed limit through the winding hills. Then I entered the stretch between Stone Creek and Raven's Gap, and everything changed. The darkness became total. Even my high beams barely pierced it. The road twisted relentlessly, sharp switchbacks, sudden drops, blind curves. I slowed down, gripping the wheel, praying I would not drift off the edge. The dread grew heavier. Something evil watched these ridges. I felt eyes on me from the trees. The radio crackled and died, so I played a rock CD. After one song, I switched it off. Silence felt safer. My senses strained for any sound or movement. Strange lights flashed deep in the woods, too bright for campfires. Between Crystal Ford and Beattyville, I caught a glimpse in my rearview mirror, a massive, pale, hairless humanoid figure loping alongside the road, keeping pace with my car. When I slammed the brakes and spun around, it vanished into the black trees. 30 minutes past Beattyville, I saw the child. He stood barefoot on the roadside in a bright yellow shirt, blue shorts, and a red hooded jacket, colors that stood out like a warning. No shoes. That detail chilled me most. I dimmed my lights and slowed to a crawl. I locked the doors, cracked the window, and asked if he was all right. He gave no answer. I asked again. He looked up. The hood fell back, revealing a tear-streaked face. I stopped. He rushed the car, dirty fingers clawing through the window gap, pounding on the glass. He screamed that they were hunting him, that they would let the monster eat him, and that they watched us right now from the darkness. Panic surged through me. I tried to roll the window up without crushing his hands. He fought to keep it down, as if trying to break in. A blinding spotlight suddenly swept over us. The boy shrieked, released the car, and ran down the road toward Beattyville. I am ashamed to admit I drove away fast, terrified. I would become another lost soul in these hills. In my mirror, I saw three figures in dark hooded robes burst onto the road. One carried the spotlight that swung toward my car and flared across the mirror, blinding me. The other two chased the boy. I faced forward and accelerated into the night. I reached Raven Gap and drove straight to the police station. Two detectives and an FBI agent listened with grim expression. When I finished, the agent thanked me and revealed that a young boy had vanished the day before from a Bible camp near the river. He wore a yellow shirt, blue shorts, and a red hooded jacket. Searchers found his shoes and a trail of footprints that simply stopped in the middle of the woods, as if something had lifted him into the air. Within minutes, patrol cars, the FBI agent, and search teams raced toward the area I described. I waited at a local diner until sunrise, then continued to Hazard. My mother was frantic when I finally arrived, but relieved I had survived. My father recovered fully. To this day, guilt haunts me. I regret not opening the door. I wonder if I could have saved him. Yet I still believe that if I had stayed even a moment longer, neither of us would have left those hills alive. No one ever found the boy. And sometimes late at night, I still see those three hooded figures in my dreams, standing on the road, watching me drive away. Next story. In August 2012, my father moved us to the tiny mountain town of Frostville, Colorado. I hated it. He had taken a management job there and told me life was not fair. I simply had to deal with it. I became quiet and withdrawn. I missed my best friend, the warm beaches of Southern California, and most of all, I missed my mother. I enrolled as a sophomore at Frostville High, a grim building pressed against a dense forest of spruce and fir. The school felt small and suffocating. I stood out no matter what I did, so I embraced it. I dressed in black, wore tight ribbons around my neck that left red marks when I removed them, and ate alone in the courtyard. 2 weeks after I arrived, a crowd gathered around a table in the cafeteria. A long line of students waited while laughter and jeers rose and fell. A handwritten sign caught my eye. Like unresolved mysteries, urban legends, ghost stories, puzzles, riddles, and justice, join us, the Shadow Force. I muttered to myself and headed outside to eat alone. Moments later, the doors opened. 3 students stepped out and walked straight toward me. "Hey you," the tallest one said. He wore an expensive green sweater and fitted jeans. His smile came easy and bright. "Me?" I asked, surprised. "Yeah, you. You're my AP Calculus class, right?" I nodded slowly. "How old are you?" the girl beside him asked. Her hair blazed a deep, unnatural red. 15, I answered. The third boy, scruffy with a perpetual half-smile, whistled. "Smart one." The first boy grinned wider. "We need someone like you. Someone who can solve things." They were the Shadow Force. Damien, Freya, and Harlan. They claimed to have solved more than 30 local crimes the police could not touch. They hunted thieves, vandals, predators, and worse. They did not cause trouble. They ended it. I joined them that same day. Harlan served as our fixer. He would get keys, access, or information from almost anyone. He carried a small, fierce Singapore cat named Shadow everywhere. The cat hated nearly everyone and made her feelings known loudly. Freya handled technology. She hacked systems, reviewed footage, and dominated every arcade machine in town. She became my closest friend. She taught me gaming tricks while I showed her safer ways to color her hair. Damien came from old money. He lived in a mansion on the mountain slope and drove a new orange L Rover every year. He played hockey, planned to become a lawyer, and fought for justice with surprising sharpness. I caught him watching me often, when I tied my ribbon, when I fixed my eyeliner. He never looked away. I became the solver, the one who connected the pieces. At first I doubted myself, but the support helped me grow confident. For the first time since losing my mother, I felt I belonged somewhere. Our cases started small. Then 3 days after I joined, a police sergeant pulled up to the school and handed Damien a folder. Someone had robbed the local general store. The stolen items, mostly food, medicine, and baby formula. Harlan led us to an old rail line deep in the woods. We found a makeshift camp. A man and woman lay unconscious on a dirty mattress, arms bruised from needles. A baby cried from a broken laundry basket nearby. The parents needed help, not prison, but the law sought child endangerment. We called it in. Freya arranged for relatives to take the infant. The case closed, yet the sadness lingered. We solved more over the following months. I grew closer to all of them. The tension between Damien and me thickened like storm clouds. He never acted on it, and I never pushed. I told myself he simply wanted to protect the group. Then, the real darkness arrived. In mid-March, searchers found the first body, a 16-year-old girl strangled. Two more followed in April, all girls, all our age. Then the sergeant's son, Victor, vanished. A curfew fell over Frostvale. My father began driving me to and from school. We worked frantically, balancing finals with a hunt for killers. One evening, Damien received a call. His face darkened. "Captain wants us at the station, now." An FBI agent had arrived. The killings not qualified as a possible serial case. The agent, a tall man in his late 20s named Kane, reviewed our past work with quiet skepticism. He pointed out flaws, inconsistencies, and alibis we had ignored. Damien grew furious. The rest of us stayed silent. After the meeting, Damien exploded. He accused me of staring at Agent Kane and stormed off with the others. I felt ashamed and confused. Instead of going home, I walked to the all-night diner. Agent Kane entered later. He ordered tea and a late meal, then stepped outside to take a call. His binder of cases, the files lay open on the table. Curiosity won. I flipped through the pages. What I read froze my blood. New forensic reports, hair evidence, timelines that matched our group's movements, connections I had never seen. I texted Damien immediately. He told me to come to his house. His parents were away. I sneaked out, borrowed my father's car, and drove up the mountain. When Damien opened the door, I burst inside. "They're involved," I whispered. "The murders. I saw it in the files." Voices cut me off. Freya and Harlan stepped out from the living room. Damien laughed, but the sound carried no warmth. "You're too smart for your own good." I backed toward the door. "You? All of you?" A muffled scream rose from somewhere deeper in the house. Victor was still alive, for now. They had formed the Shadow Force to build perfect records for elite colleges. When the girls discovered the truth, the group silenced them. Victor had dated the last victim and pieced it together. Damien pulled a knife and lunged. The blade sliced my arm, pain exploded, adrenaline took over. I dodged Freya and Harlan, crashed through the back door, and ran into the dark forest. Branches tore at me, blood soaked my sleeve. I heard them crashing behind me, calling my name in sing-song taunts. Then I saw a flashlight beam sweeping the ground, a figure crouched among the trees. "Help me," I screamed. Agent Kane stood up, hand moving to his holster. "Who's chasing you?" "They are. Damien, Freya, Harlan. They killed those girls." He moved fast. He examined my wound, fashioned a tourniquet from his tie and a stick, and led me to his car while scanning the trees. "I'm a good shot, even at night. Stay close." He drove me to the emergency clinic. He stayed with me while doctors stitched the wound and ran tests. He called my father. He waited. The next day he took my full statement, my testimony combined with the evidence brought the Shadow Force down. Freya tried to flee and got caught at a library computer. Harlan, high and rambling near the tracks, confessed to transients who turned him in. Damien held out longest, hiding in one of his family's vacation homes. But even money could not save him. He finally talked. Whether from fear or pride, I never knew. They found Victor too late. The killers had stabbed him and left him in the woods. My father moved us back to California as quickly as he could. I visit my mother's grave often. I tell her everything. The nightmares, the PTSD, the homeschooling. The way some friendships wear smiles until they show their teeth. One afternoon, Agent Kane appeared at the cemetery carrying a small crate. Shadow, the cat, purred contentedly in his arm. He had rescued her from Harlan. "She needs a good home," he said. "Thought of you." I accepted. The little cat curled into my lap like she had waited for this all along. We sat together on the grass. Kane spoke quietly about the endless fight, missing people, new monsters, a world that never stops bleeding. He fights anyway, because he can, because silence feels worse than exhaustion. I asked if he ever gets tired of it. "Every day," he said with a tired smile. But I keep going. Action beats anger. And sometimes you save someone. He handed me his card before leaving. Call you if you ever need anything, day or night. I still have that card, and I still have Shadow. Some nights the mountain winds sounds like footsteps behind me. I turn on every light and hold the cat close. I remind myself the monsters wear familiar faces, and that some people, even exhausted ones in wrinkled suits, still carry flashlights into the dark. Next story. In 2014, I worked at an oil rig in federal waters off Southern California. Late one clear night, with the sky darker than usual and almost no atmospheric haze, I stood on the upper deck with my co-worker Turk. The rest of the crew slept below or had gone ashore. We talked for a while, then fell into comfortable silence. Turk began to doze. That was when I saw it. A bright white cylinder hovered just above the waves. It had no wings, no rotors, no windows, no markings, only a smooth, flawless surface that glowed with its own light. It moved with impossible grace, darting north, west, south, and east as if examining the water. The object made no sound. A deep wave of dread washed over me. I felt certain I witnessed something I had no right to see. I shook Turk, but he remained asleep. On instinct, I pulled out my phone, snapped several photos, and recorded a 17-second video. The moment the timer reached 18 seconds, the object shot upward and vanished into the sky in a single impossible burst. No aircraft on Earth could perform that maneuver without destroying anything inside it. I tried to wake Turk again, failed, and eventually went below to drink a few beers and sleep. I told myself the sighting was over. I was wrong. The next evening, I sat at our usual dive bar hoping to impress a few locals. My on-again girlfriend, Leela, just arrived before sunset. She looked stunning as always, but her gaze kept drifting past me toward the back corner. A man sat there reading a thick, worn book. He wore a perfectly pressed black suit and polished wingtip shoes that looked completely out of place among bikers and faded denim. He seemed calm, almost too calm. Lila called him handsome. She said he looked strong beneath the suit. I tried to laugh it off, but tension rose between us. When I stepped away to the restroom, the man moved to the bar beside her. By the time I returned, they spoke easily. He held up the heavy book when she asked about it. I confronted him. Words grew heated. He remained polite, almost amused. When I swung at him, he moved like someone trained in close combat. In seconds, he had me in a controlled hold. He offered to pay our tab to an apology, then left without another word. Lila told me he carried a pistol under his jacket. She told me we were only friends. The rejection stung more than the fight. We drove away in heavy silence. Blue lights flashed behind us. A black SUV pulled us over. Two men in identical dark suits approached. They claimed my car was stolen. They asked precise questions about where I had been the previous night at 10:22 p.m., exactly when I filmed the object. They searched me, took my wallet, and noted I had no phone. When I described the man from the bar, the agents exchanged dark looks. One muttered a number, 42, and they spoke as if they knew him well and disliked him. Suddenly, they handed my wallet back and told me I was free to go. They warned me to leave quickly, then sped off. Lila grew terrified. She insisted the men were not ordinary police. A few minutes later, a black Ducati motorcycle appeared behind us. The rider wore a full suit and helmet. He followed every turn. When I tried to lose him, he stayed close. Near Lila's apartment, he roared ahead, pulled beside my window, and tossed something through the open glass. It was my phone. He gave a thumbs up, revved the engine, and disappeared into the night. Later, alone and calmer, I checked the phone. The passcode still worked. Nothing appeared tampered with, except every photo and the 17-second video of the white object had been wiped clean. I never saw the suited man, the agents, or the Ducati rider again. The Navy later confirmed similar objects in official videos. People watched, speculated, then moved on to the next distraction. But I remember the dread I felt on that rig deck. I remember how quickly my evidence vanished. I remember the calm precision of the man who returned my phone and erased the only proof I had. Some sights are not for us. Some watchers make sure we forget. And on certain clear nights, when the ocean lies dark and still, I still feel it. Something vast and silent hovering just beyond the edge of what we are allowed to know. Next story. Undisclosed location in Tennessee. The forest lay silent between a star-filled sky. Two soldiers moved through the trees like shadows. A light breeze stirred the leaves, but nothing else moved. The man carried a Carl Gustav recoilless rifle slung across his back and held a Remington 700 at the ready. He glanced behind him. "How are you holding up?" The second soldier kept walking, eyes fixed on the shifting darkness. A camouflage camera bounced against his chest with each step. The first man stopped and raised his rifle. "Sergeant Crow?" Crow blinked and looked around, startled. "I'm fine, Captain." Captain Graves studied him. "You sure?" Crow nodded. Graves hesitated and spoke quietly. "I can finish this alone." Crow's face hardened. "You think I'm weak?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what?" "You're our communications sergeant. The fire tower isn't far. You could report a position and that we're still alive." Crow met his gaze. "I'm not leaving you, sir." Graves nodded once, lowered his rifle, and continued forward. Crow followed. B-Team waited in a makeshift camp deep in the woods. A torn tarp stretched between two trees. Two boots protruded from beneath it, motionless. Captain Graves leaned against the trunk with his eyes closed. "We are doing something, Sergeant Crow." "We are waiting." Crow shifted in his ghillie suit. "We've been waiting for hours. Nothing has happened." "We wait as long as necessary," Graves replied. Crow glanced at the others, Briefcase, Senior, and Doc, then asked the question they all wanted answered. "Why did Command speak to you and Watchdog privately? What aren't they telling the rest of us?" Graves opened his eyes. Watchdog, leaning against a nearby tree, kept his face blank. "They told us to wait," Watchdog said simply. Crow opened his mouth to further press, but Briefcase cut him off. "Enough. I need sleep." The night grew quiet except for crickets and wind. Beneath the tarp lay the body of Atlas, one of their own. Crow broke the silence again. "Why only 6 of us? Why call us B-Team? What happened to the rest of A-Team? And what killed Atlas?" No one answered. Suddenly Doc hissed, "2 o'clock." All 6 men raised their weapons. A large shape moved between the trees. "It's Preacher," Graves said, stepping forward. A-Team leader. Preacher staggered into the clearing. His uniform hung in burnt, bloody shreds. A black, oil-like substance coated his face and neck. His muscles stood out beneath his skin as if every fiber strained in agony. He collapsed at their feet. Graves rushed him and poured water over his face. "Preacher, what happened? Where's the rest of your team?" Preacher's eyes rolled wildly. He spoke in broken gasps. "They wouldn't listen. I told them not to send more. They never listen." He began to sob. "I can't. Please, don't let them." Doc moved forward with his medical kit. Preacher suddenly lunged, snatched Graves' sidearm, pressed it under his own chin, and pulled the trigger. The shot echoed throughout the trees. Crow stumbled backward, pale and shaking. He just... Watchdog grabbed Crow by the vest and pulled him away from the camp. "Walk with me." As they moved into the darkness, Graves issued calm orders behind them. Doc bagged the substance. Watchdog's camera. Photographs for the handlers. Case, get on comms. Senior, perimeter with me. Watchdog and Crow pressed onward through the night. The air grew thick with a foul chemical stench. Crow sniffed. "You smell that?" Watchdog nodded. They advanced carefully and nearly tripped over what remained of Briefcase. The lower half of his body and one arm were gone. Watchdog removed his dog tags in silence. They continued. A short time later they found Doc propped against a tree. Barely alive, black substance seeped from his wounds. "The samples," Doc gasped. "Get them." Or this was pointless. Watchdog refused to leave him. Doc insisted with his final breath. Watchdog took the samples and the tags. Gunfire erupted north of them. They ran. Captain Graves stood against a tree, bleeding from the head, his rifle on the ground. One of the last members of A-Team faced him, an inhumanly fast figure with twisted features. Watchdog raised his rifle, but the creature moved fast. It slammed into him, it lifted him, and hurled him against a tree. Watchdog dropped his weapon and cried out in pain. Crow acted instantly. He shouldered the Carl Gustav, aimed and fired. The creature vanished in a burst of fire, bone, and black fluid. For one brief moment, Crow allowed himself a smile. I did it. The final 18 member exploded from the darkness and drove a sharpened bone through Crow's chest. Crow looked down in shock as blood poured from his mouth. Watchdog crawled to Graves' discarded rifle, reloaded one-handed, and fired. The creature finally fell. He dragged Crow close. Stay with me, Andre. We're getting you out. But Crow was already gone. Graves pulled Watchdog to his feet as a distant sound of helicopter rotors filled the night. We have to move, now! They left the clearing and the dead behind. Captain Graves and Warrant Officer Watchdog stood in full dress uniform inside a quiet government building. A woman in a mauve suit led them to a heavy wooden door. 4 men in black suits waited inside. The one called Shaw offered them positions in a special unit. He praised Watchdog's family legacy and urged them to hunt the 2 missing 18 members now spotted in New York. Graves refused outright. I will not join your operation. Watchdog remained silent for a long moment, then asked Graves to wait outside. When he finally stepped into the hallway, Graves knew the choice had been made. They walked out into bright sunlight. Near the Washington Monument, Graves stopped. You don't have to do this, Stevens. Watchdog looked away. I don't have a choice. Graves shook his head. You always have a choice. You just made the wrong one. A small girl approached and asked for a photograph with the soldiers. Watchdog knelt beside her and smiled for the camera while Graves walked away. Watchdog watched the American flag ripple in the wind and wondered how many more would vanish between the trees before the world learned what waited in the hollows. Some things a government does not fight. It simply buries.